saving is sure saving with United States Defense Bonds. Defense is your job. Buy defense bonds.
See the distinguished C2 Dumont, the most advanced television. WABD, Channel 5.
The Johns Hopkins Science Review, presented by the Johns Hopkins University and WAAM in Baltimore. This is the Johns Hopkins University, famed for 76 years for its contributions to science and the humanities. Here in its many laboratories, Hopkins scientists are constantly probing into the still unknown secrets of science, which, when discovered, will be translated into benefits to be enjoyed by you, the people of America. Each week, we look over the shoulders of today's scientists and catch a glimpse of the results of their research. On this, our 167th telecast, we will watch as the worm turns. And here is Lynn Poole of the Johns Hopkins University to introduce this week's program.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Johns Hopkins Science Review. You know, tonight we're going to talk about caterpillars and butterflies, and I have to admit that my education in this field has been sadly lacking. Because before we started working on this presentation, I knew very little about caterpillars and butterflies, but I found out a lot. And one thing that I found out, much to my amazement, is that people in many countries eat caterpillars and butterflies. And even in our own country, you can buy caterpillars, fried caterpillars, to eat. Now, we thought you'd very much like to see what these fried caterpillars look like, so I brought along a can tonight, which I'm going to open here. My can opener doesn't give out on me. There we have them. And these fried caterpillars, you might hear how they come out. I have two friends along with me tonight, and they're going to take a taste of these caterpillars so that they can tell you how they taste. Now, they're right over here, and gentlemen, Mr. Fenwick, will you take one of them? Mr. Whiteman? How do they taste?
Not bad. Not bad at all.
What would you say they taste like?
A little salty.
A little salty. That's right. They're really quite good. As a matter of fact, they're crisp. They taste a lot like crisply fried bacon. Now, people in many countries do eat these. As a matter of fact, it's a pretty steady diet. If you think I'm exaggerating, well, I'll refer you to Mr. Austin H. Clark of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., who is our guest this week. And I want to ask him, Mr. Clark, do you think that I exaggerated when I said that a lot of people eat caterpillars?
Mr. Poole, you're absolutely correct. In many parts of the world, caterpillars are an integral part of the diet of the native peoples. Now, those caterpillars which you just exhibited are the so-called agave worms. They live as borers in the stems of the plant we call the sensory plant. In Mexico, it's known as the agave or maguey. It's the same plant, the juice of which they make that famous drink, pulque. In Mexico, they also have another group of caterpillars, and they live in these silk nests. And in western Mexico, the forest is sometimes quite white with those nests. Now, that nest will be full of caterpillars, some scores of. They live in the nests in the daytime, and they come out and feed at night. Those nests were also useful in the old days of the Aztec civilization because the Aztecs made their paper from the silk of those nests. In British Guiana, they use the caterpillars of that large clear yellow butterfly, which is so common in the south, and in the summer as far north as Maryland. The natives get them, and they cook them, and they mix them with cassava flour or with turtle eggs. They're extremely fond of them. Now, in Australia, they have a butterfly which they call the bugong. And there's a mountain in Australia called Bugong Mountain because of the abundance of these butterflies. And the butterflies spend the night on the cliffs on the side of the mountain. The natives light fires under the cliffs, and the smoke brings the butterflies down. They collect the butterflies by the bushels, and they take them and they throw them on some bare ground that has been heated by a large fire. That singes the wings off and at the same time cooks the butterflies. And they take the butterflies and make a sort of a cake out of them. They, at first, when they eat the butterflies, they become quite ill. But after a few days, the illness goes away, and then they get very fat on them. There's another kind of butterfly in Australia that they eat. They follow up the flights of these butterflies to the trees in which they're spending the night, and they light fires under the trees, and that brings the butterflies down. Well, in both cases, there's a black crow that also is fond of the butterflies and comes and tries to steal the butterflies from the natives. And the butterflies, the natives kill the crows if they can with clubs, and they eat the crows as well as the butterflies. Now, in Africa, the natives are exceedingly fond of caterpillars, and they have special names for all the real delectable kinds of caterpillars. But they have no idea of the butterflies into which they turn. They have no interest in the butterflies, but they just love the caterpillars.
Well, of course, this fact that people around the world eat caterpillars and eat butterflies is rather amazing to us, but the thing that is not amazing to us is that the butterfly has been used as adornment for a long time.
Oh, for many centuries. Now, in China, in the old days, centuries ago, butterflies were a regular ornament in the houses. They were largely pinned in boxes and set up. In the south of China, there's a mountain which was noted for the particularly fine butterflies that occurred around that mountain. Well, those butterflies were especially reserved for the emperor. In the early trade with China, the Europeans got those butterflies, and they became quite an article of trade in Europe. Later, when they began to develop trade with the Moluccas, the very large and spectacular butterflies in the Moluccas, those gorgeous metallic green ones and the great blue ones.
The great iridescent quality.
Great iridescent ones. And they became very popular in Europe, where they brought a very high price. Well, then, when they began to open up trade with Brazil and the Guianas, the still more spectacular butterflies from those regions became very popular. A few generations ago, the people in this country used to have these curio cabinets, or whatnots, at the corner of the parlor.
Right.
And no curio cabinet was really complete without a box with these beautiful South American butterflies and equally gorgeous South American beetles and queer insects of various sorts. Well, the whatnot and the curio cabinet has now pretty well disappeared. But they have found another use for butterflies, and that is in the form of tea trays and ornaments of various sorts. That is an ashtray, but they also make up plates in the same way with butterflies, and they put them in these tea trays, and they also make lockets and other forms of jewelry. Here's a bright blue butterfly's wing with
That's
a little
a real
butterfly
beauty
on it.
Well, Mr. Clark, you've been talking with such eloquence about the succulence of the caterpillar and the great beauty of the butterfly. The world must be made up of things that have got to be bad. What's bad about the butterfly?
Now, Mr. Poole, you embarrass me. Butterflies are such beautiful things. I hate to think of really naughty butterflies. But
well, let's not say
unfortunately-
bad. Let's say what's wrong with them.
Well, many butterflies are pests on garden plants, on trees, and pretty much everything. Although there are not nearly so many butterflies that are pests as there are moths. Now, here is a little butterfly, a little white butterfly. You find that around every farmyard and pretty much everywhere else. It's even common around markets in the cities. That little butterfly was accidentally introduced from Europe about 1859, and it feeds on cabbages. In fact, it's one of the major pests on cabbages all over the country. And in recent years, it has extended to Fiji, Australia, and New Zealand. In the south, particularly, we have this butterfly, which is known as the giant swallowtail. Now, the caterpillars of the giant swallowtail feed on young orange trees. The orange is not native to this country, but this type of butterfly, which you find pretty much all over the tropics, feeds on various relatives of the orange. In this area, it feeds on the prickly ash and the hop tree. But if you bring an orange tree into the territory where any of these butterflies occur, they promptly specialize on it, to the great distress of the orange growers. Now, there's another little butterfly, and which looks very much like this. And that, the caterpillar of that butterfly feeds on hops, and it's often quite a serious pest on hops. And it's known as the hop merchant. The pupa of that butterfly is ornamented with metallic spots. And the idea is that if the spots are gold, the price of hops will be high. If the spots are silver, the price won't be so good. So they call...
and everything.
Oh, yes. So they call the little boy the hop merchant. Well, this butterfly, the painted lady, which is found all over the world, except in South America, is sometimes a pest on various garden plants, and particularly on hollyhocks, when it's common. Usually it's not too common in North America, at least in the eastern part. But once in a while it occurs in tremendous numbers. And in that case, it's likely to be very destructive to hollyhocks and sometimes other garden plants. There's a large skipper which lives in the tropics and in the extreme south here. And every once in a while that spreads north. And in 1937, it became a very serious pest on cannas. And it wrecked pretty all the canna beds up as far as southern Maryland.
Mr. Clark, I would judge that if butterflies are pests, the reason they're pests is because they're looking for food, so they eat plants.
They're looking for food, and we oblige them by growing those food plants in large masses in great numbers. That's just the right thing for the butterfly, you see. He just moves right in.
And takes over from them.
Takes over.
Well, he certainly must eat insects, too.
Some butterflies do eat insects, and they're all small butterflies, like this. Now, this little butterfly, the caterpillars have a honey gland on the back that produces the honey, which ants are extremely fond. Now, the little caterpillars of that butterfly first feed on the flower buds of thyme, growing their ant nests. And when they get partly grown, they go down into the nest of the ants and spend the rest of their happy lives eating the grubs of the ants. Now, the ants are so extremely fond of this honey that they don't object to the butterfly eating their babies. And more than that, if you disturb an ant nest with those little caterpillars in it, the first thing that the ants do is run the caterpillars off to safety before they take their own babies.
Well, of course, we all know that these butterflies come from caterpillars, and I wonder if it wouldn't be a good idea to pause just for a moment and refresh our memories about the life cycle of the butterfly.
The life cycles of butterflies are a fascinating study. The adult butterfly lays eggs, which starts the cycle. From the opening in the eggshell, which you see through the microscope, come the tiny larvae, the caterpillars. And here you see the larvae shortly after leaving the egg. Caterpillars are prodigious eaters and spend most of their time devouring leaves. That is, most of them eat leaves, and growing until they become full-grown caterpillars like this one. The caterpillar you see here is the common black parsnip swallowtail. If you grow parsnips in your garden, you probably know it well. It's green with black bands. Most caterpillars have a kindly disposition and don't bother their neighbors. But some are cannibals, and if two of them meet, one provides a feast for the other. This is especially true of the little blue butterflies and their relatives. So you always find these singly. After shedding its skin several times, the caterpillar turns into a pupa. The pupa stage is inactive. It hangs by the tail or lies along some support. Some pupae will wiggle violently if disturbed, and a few will squeak, but most are quite inert. The pupae of most butterflies are wholly exposed, though a few make loose cocoons, usually among dead leaves on the ground. No butterflies make elaborate silk cocoons, as do so many moths. From the pupa, the adult butterfly eventually emerges in all its colors, and now the cycle is complete. And once again, the butterfly lays eggs to start the next cycle.
One thing you haven't shown us, Mr. Clark, is this very fascinating butterfly that's sort of been taken apart, clear up there. That certainly shows us the anatomical structure of
That
the
shows
butterfly.
various parts of the butterfly. In the front of the butterfly, there's the head. And the head always bears two very large compound eyes. And then these two antennae are feelers, which carry sense organs. Down in the front of the head, there are two short organs with three joints each, which are known as palpi. Between the palpi, there is this long proboscis, or sucking tube, which ordinarily is coiled up like a watch spring between the palpi. Behind the head, there is the thorax, which is composed of three parts, solidly fused together. On the underside, the thorax bears three pairs of legs, one to each part. The legs may be three walking legs, as in this case, or the first pair of legs may be extremely short and kept folded up against the body. The second and third part of the thorax bear the two pairs of wings. The wings are strengthened by a series of veins, and the veins are quite important in the classification of butterflies. In nearly all butterflies, the wings are covered, completely covered, with a series of very small scales that overlap like the shingles on a roof. The scales are quite varied. Many male butterflies have special types of scales that serve as evaporating surfaces for a sweet perfume that they give off. The third part of the butterfly is this abdomen, which is always definitely segmented and is almost always shorter than the wings.
Do you mind if I pick up something you said there, that perfume? Earlier today you told us about butterflies that have a little perfume to them. I wonder which ones they are here.
Well, the butterflies in North America that have the strongest perfume are perhaps these silver spots, known to everybody. They occur pretty much all over the country, especially in hilly or mountainous regions. And the males of these silver spots give off a strong odor of sweet sandalwood. Here is another one that has a strong sandalwood odor. That's one of the silver spots. This butterfly here gives off an odor like sweet roses, and it occurs in India, where it is known as the rose butterfly, because everybody can smell the thing. The odor is quite strong. Many other butterflies give off an odor, but usually the odor is more or less faint and can only be detected by a very good nose, particularly the noses of children. They're quick to detect the odors of these male butterflies.
One thing we've been having a lot of fun with here is, as you put these out for us, is trying to compare the butterflies and which butterfly belonged to which species. And I think these two butterflies here are the same species.
They're the same species. This is the male, and this is a female. Now, the males are always like that, white with a few black markings on them. But there are more than 30 different styles of females. And they differ in the color of the spots, and the size of the spots, and in various other ways. And from the eggs laid by one of these females, you can get usually 2 or 3 other styles of females from the eggs. But the males are always the same. That's a common African butterfly. And one of our butterflies, the common yellow swallowtail, in most of eastern North America, has 2 styles of females, one yellow like the males, and one dark brown or blackish.
But the male is always...
But the male is always yellow.
Always the same. Well, if you look over all of these cases that you have here with the dozens of butterflies, it seems to me that this is the only one that is really unique.
Well, that curious little butterfly occurs in southeastern Asia and the adjacent islands. And it is usually found near water. And it goes flying off across the water, and as it flies, it looks far more like a dragonfly than it does like a butterfly. So it's commonly known as the dragonfly butterfly.
That seems a rather sensible name to give it to it when it looks that way. Before we go on, I'd like to ask you to tell us about this butterfly. There is an interesting story connected
Oh,
with
yes, that's known as Roger Brooks' butterfly. And it comes from Malay Peninsula and Borneo. And the original Roger Brooks was a British yachtsman who landed in Sarawak. And he found a fight going on between 2 of the sultans in the area. And he and his crew joined forces with one of the sultans. And they promptly licked the other sultan. Then he settled in Borneo and married the daughter of the sultan. And his descendants have ruled Sarawak ever since, up to about a year ago when it was taken over as a British Crown colony. But this butterfly was named for him, Pukiana. And incidentally, it recently appeared on one of the beautiful postage stamps of Sarawak.
Is that right? I should think it would make a very lovely postage
It
stamp.
is a lovely postage stamp.
I wish that all our viewers could actually see this in its color, because the black is really deep velvety black and the green is iridescent green. It seems to be shining out of that black. And of course also, if we could all of us see the colors in the two
Yes,
boxes that you have here.
They're lovely, especially the South American ones.
These two right here are the ones that particularly fascinate me.
Yes, those are two of the world's most brilliant butterfly. This one, which lives in the emerald regions of Colombia, around Muso, the natives say that when that butterfly dies, its soul enters the ground and becomes an emerald. That's how they account for emeralds.
Ah, yes.
And this one is from Guyana. And this one here is the one that's most commonly used in butterfly jewelry. It has large wings, and they cut them up, you see, and mount them in various ways.
And get that wonderful iridescent quality
Yes.
from them. Going on to this one, Mr. Clark.
Well,
This particularly fascinated me because it answers the old question about, is the female butterfly always larger than the male?
the female butterfly is usually larger than the male. But in the case of this butterfly, which is a common monarch, now these here are males. You can always tell the male by a little sac they have on this vein and hind wing. The females lack the sac. But in this case, they're practically the same size, you see. But in most butterflies, the females are larger than the males and usually somewhat duller in color. Now, in this case, the males are metallic blue and velvety black, but the females dull brown with light spots. Although that's not the largest butterfly, it's one of the largest butterflies. And there is one that is considerably larger from southeastern New Guinea. It spreads about 12 inches. Now, you can compare that with this little butterfly, which is one of the smallest of the butterflies. That occurs around our Gulf Coast.
This, I think, is particularly interesting, the way it stands here, as many of your exhibitions in the Smithsonian are, to take one of the largest and compare it here with one of the very smallest. Mr. Clark, a few weeks ago, Roger Torrey Peterson, the famous ornithologist, appeared on the Johns Hopkins Science Review and told us a lot about the migration of birds. But it was not until we started talking with you that we found that butterflies migrate the same as birds do.
Well, it's not quite the same, because in very many cases, the butterflies don't come back. It's a one-way job
Oh,
for
I
them,
see.
although in some cases they do. Now, butterfly migrations in America were reported long before bird migrations ever were. In fact, the first notice of a butterfly migration in North America was on June 11, 1494, and that was described by Don Ferdinand Columbus. This is the world's most famous migrant. It's the common monarch, and it is found in the summer as far as central Canada and occasionally as far as Hudson Bay. In the autumn, these butterflies move southward, sometimes in enormous masses, millions, and a cloud of them will pass over anywhere from 5 or 6 feet up to about 400 feet in the air. And those great masses of butterflies always attract great attention, and they're noticed in the local papers.
Well, that's quite a flight for such a little butterfly, but I don't want us to miss the two butterflies here.
Oh, South America has many butterflies with more or less transparent wings. And this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. This little chap, they live largely in the deep forest. And this little chap, when he's going flying along near the ground, all you can see are two little pink rose petals going along this way. You can't see the rest of it.
And of seeing these, the one up here, I believe, is the one you told me that is like a chameleon.
Oh, yes, that's the leaf butterfly. Now, here's the upper side. You see, it is handsomely colored, like so many other butterflies. But the underside is in the shape of a leaf, and the tails look like the petiole or stem of the leaf. And here you get the midrib, and here you get the veins, and you even get the fungus spots on the leaf. And the butterflies of this general type, when they light, they often seem to disappear. You know, quite a time finding them.
In other words, they take on the character
They
of
turn
the
on the
leaf.
character of a dead leaf, and they just seem to disappear. They brighten up when they're flying around, and they just disappear.
It's really a good way of protecting themselves.
Oh, yes.
And these creatures over here protect themselves very
Now,
well,
they
too.
protect themselves in another way, known as mimicry. Now, this is a moth that is not eaten by insect-eating birds or mammals. Now, here is a swallow-tailed butterfly that takes on the colors of the moth and apparently is protected from its enemies by being mistaken for this inedible moth. Now, here we have a butterfly which also belongs to an inedible group. You can give this butterfly to a butterfly-eating bird or a monkey, and they just turn up their nose and throw it away. Here's another butterfly belonging to a good, nice edible group that mimics its color. And here is a moth that also mimics its color.
In other words, these are inedible because they are really poisonous.
They're either poisonous or acrid or
Uh-huh.
have some other undesirable quality. These two are not. And so they protect themselves by imitating the color of this noxious one.
That's a very good way to protect oneself. And speaking of these being poisonous, they come from caterpillars. You can assure me that the caterpillars that we've eaten today are not poisonous.
You'll know in a few days, Mr. Poole.
That's not a very satisfactory answer.
Well,
Dr.
I ate
Clark.
some a couple of weeks or so ago, and I'm
And
still
you're still
alive.
here. Well, we hope that we're still here a week from now. We hope that you'll be with us because we have another summer program to bring you to tell you the story in stones.
Every year, Americans travel thousands of miles to see the great natural monuments of our country. Waterfalls and canyons, rock bridges and fantastic mountain valleys. These natural wonders were made long before the first settlers came to America, long before the first Indian tribes. They were made before there was any history to record their beginnings. But each has a history, recorded in the very rock of which it is made. Next week, we will see the history of some of America's geological wonder spots. Be with us then for Stories in Stone. The Johns Hopkins Science Review is produced by Lynn Poole. Directed by Paul Kane. Associate producer is Robert Fenwick. Associate Director, Ed Zero. Art direction is by Barry Mansfield. Your narrator has been Joel Chaseman. The Johns Hopkins Science Review originates in the studios of WAAM in Baltimore.
This is the Dumont Television Network. Now stay on 5 for the evening session of the Democratic Convention.
Are you sure you're getting the best? You take just aspirin. Something even more dependable than aspirin.